Thanks everyone for coming out and to Ventura events for hosting us. This is my first time in this space and it seems pretty great and welcoming, so hope you all enjoy it. So we have a pretty packed meeting tonight presentation. I'll kick it off. I'll then hand it off to Joy, the lead of our water quality testing program, and then we have two really great guest speakers who will talk to us about algae blooms, different aspects and perspectives on them. So hope you stick around for both talks. So thank you, Ventura Events. And then before we kick off, we also acknowledge that we are on Chumash land and 13,000 years today and into the future. As always, we have a ton of events happening. Summer is our busiest season, but we still have things going on in the fall. We keep our events calendar up to date on our website, so go ahead and check it out. I'm going to highlight a couple of things coming up in the next month for our next chapter meeting. Louder, I've been told. Okay, just like raise your hand or something if you can't hear me. So our first cleanup coming up this month is along the Ringtown Parkway this Saturday. We have a couple more cleanups that will be happening there before the bridge closure, which is, I think, expected to happen in January, as of now as the timeline. But up until then, we'll be having our regular monthly cleanups up there, so come and check it out. Then we have our two other monthly cleanups down at Oregon Beach and by Fort Wainini on Saturday the 18th. Then the fourth Saturday of the month is our C Street cleanup. That one will be in collaboration with Outerknown. For all these cleanups, of course, it's great to come pick up trash with us, but we also need volunteer support with setting up and breaking down. So if you're able to help with the setup before or after, we really appreciate that. We also have our monthly garden work day at the Loma Vista Garden. That's the third Saturday of every month. And new event, which we've been doing since June, I believe, is our monthly Fort Wainini dune restoration work days. Those are on the first Saturday of every month, so that'll be coming up before our next chapter meeting. I want to highlight this time of year in the fall, we're always looking for new executive committee members to join. So I want to give a shout out to opportunities to get involved this year. It's a 2-year volunteer position. The executive committee is essentially the equivalent of like a board for a nonprofit. And we help set the strategy for our programs and for our campaigns for the upcoming year, our budget. We provide support to all of our program leads with our sponsored cleanups, you name it. So you're kind of managing under Surfrider Nationals, who we ultimately report to, and every chapter reports to Surfrider Nationals. You work at a very grassroots level because we know what is happening in our community, and so we get to set our campaigns and action alerts. So it's a really awesome way to get involved outside of if you're coming out and helping out in more tangible ways with our cleanups or cigarette program or our water quality testing. If you kind of want to get behind the scenes of how a nonprofit works and you're more interested in like strategy and planning, we would really appreciate it and would love to hear from you. As I mentioned, they're 2-year positions. They start in January. And these are the opportunities you have open for this year: chair, vice chair, volunteer coordinator, and member at large. If you're interested, our website, if you go to our news tab, the first thing you'll see is a page all about the executive committee. It kind of breaks down the different roles, what the expectation is like. A really small, we call it an application form, but it's more of an expression of interest. So if you could go ahead and fill that out and share it with anyone that you're interested or that you think might be interested in this opportunity by November 3rd. So that gives us a little time to then notify folks before the new year starts. And I don't think I introduced myself. I always forget to not introduce myself. I'm Alexandra, the current chair of our chapter. So I I want to flag our Hold On to Your Butt cigarette butt cleanup program. We're always looking for volunteers to help out with this. Julie, raise your hand. Julie's at the door. She's our program lead for that. If you're interested, go ahead and talk to her. Also, can all the current executive committee members raise their hand as well? We have Dave here. We have Britta in the back. Marie back there as well. So if you're interested also in learning about the executive committee and what it's like, I'd encourage you after the meeting to go ahead and chat with any of those three organizations. Shout out to all of our ocean-friendly restaurants in our program. If you know of any restaurants that you frequent, that you think should be a part of our ocean-friendly restaurant program, please let us know so we can reach out to them. And our next month's chapter meeting will be focusing on Port Wainini and Boynton Beach. It'll be at Social Tap with Seaward. We'll mix it up with some educational things. We'll give an overview of our project, what's coming up the next couple months, how you can get involved. Sharing about our geospatial work we've been doing for trash monitoring in that area. And then we'll do some fun trivia and prizes, make it a little social. So thank you for listening to my housekeeping. And now I'm going to turn it over to Joy, our water quality testing program lead.
Thanks everyone for coming out. I know it's warm here. Sorry, there is AC, but it's not working. So if you want to get extra drinks, feel free to stand up and get an extra drink. My name is Joy Downing-Riley. I run the Blue Water Task Force for our chapter. What is Blue Water Task Force? Well, it's run from our labs here, in addition to 50 labs throughout the country. It's the largest community science-based volunteer organization in the country. And we are always needing to have ocean water sampled because there are many threats to our oceans, as you know, to clean water. So one of our initiatives under Surfrider is we fight for clean water to protect the health and sustainability of our planet's most precious resource. So this is my 5th year with Blue Water Task Force, and I have team members here. You guys raise your hand if you're water samplers. So we really appreciate these guys getting out in the cold water during the wet winter months. So what we do is we supplement the Ventura County's health department's ocean water sampling program, which runs mostly April through October. They sample at 40 sites, and then they drop down their testing to 19 sites during the wet winter months. But as we all know, right, we're still at the beach. So we need to know what is causing bacterial pollution that might cause waterborne illness. So our mission is to help people stay out of the water when there are unsafe water conditions that might cause recreational waterborne illness. So what are the symptoms of waterborne illness? Is anybody here wanting to share that they've had waterborne illness? I have had several times ear infections, nose infections, etc. So what we test for in the Water Task Force is a particular bacteria called Akashiwo. And this is what it looks like. Normally it lives in the intestines of warm-blooded mammals, but when it shows up in water, it is an indicator bacteria. That means that other bacteria and viruses are in water that can cause waterborne illness. Symptoms of waterborne illness are diarrhea, that's the most common one, stomach cramps, vomiting, weight loss, loss of appetite and fever, skin, eye, ear, and nose infections. So we want to stay free from those. So here's our friend, Enterococcus, and as I mentioned, is an indicator bacteria. So when it is present, other viruses and bacteria are present that cause waterborne illness. So as we all know, the leave no trace principle, know before you go. So to use that principle, know before you go, you can, April through October, check out Ventura County's BC Safe Beaches app, and that's real easy to download, it's free. Pay attention to the signage. I didn't put this on the slideshow, but I keep getting questions about how come Ventura County doesn't put up signs? Well, there are a lot of signs. They look like that over there. So permanent signs are posted at places like Rincon Point, Mondo's, C Street, all the way down our coast. So don't ignore the signs because they're there to keep you safe. Obviously, avoid open water if you have storms or blooms. Follow the 72-hour rule. That's what we preach. The 72-hour rule is after a storm event, you want to stay out of the water for at least 72 hours. So, I'm going to look at the surface here and then how are the waves? So anyway, stay out of the water after a storm event. Avoid ingesting water or letting your dogs or children play or touching your algae mats. And I'll touch on algae in just a second. And always rinse your eyes, ears, nose, and mouth and stand out of contact with ocean water or fresh water. So how to find our weekly results, we'll be starting on November 6th. Posting results on November 7th, about 3 p.m. Check Instagram at Surfrider BC for our sites. We go from Rincon Point down to Fort Wayne Pier. You can also sign up for our newsletter. You have to go to the Water Task Force homepage at learn.surfrider.org. You can also just check the results on our homepage. They pop up as soon as our data is in. Or you can use our handy-dandy Blue Water Task Force QR code and pick up a sticker at the end of the meeting over there to put on your water bottle. So you just flash your phone on the QR code and there come your results. That's probably the easiest way, in my opinion. So we are here tonight to talk about algae blooms. So the reason we're focusing on algae blooms for this meeting is because they're on the increase. Climate change and more nutrient is a word for fertilizers, have caused an increase both in freshwater algae blooms that are toxic, that can cause harmful impacts of animals and people. So here are some things to stay away from algae blooms. So don't enter the water where algae mats are present. So say, for example, I was just at the estuary this morning. There's floating mats that you can see algae growing up from the bottom of the estuary. Those are not necessarily toxic to us, but you want to keep an eye on them. We do have some results just from the summer. We did a survey of the Ventura River, and we did find some species of cyanobacteria present. We sent a composite sample to our state lab, and they did find that those blooms were causing any type of toxins being released that can be harmful. But you need to know to stay away from algae. In our marine waters, which Marco is going to talk more about, the first way you know that there's a harmful algae bloom out in the Channel Islands is to watch for cichlids, stranded sea lions, and dolphins. If you see a cichlid stranded sea lion that is exhibiting head bobbing, foaming at the mouth, bulging eyes, cannot move, they're like just in the sand, and they can't move, that animal has acid toxicosis, which is a result of harmful algae blooms. What happens is, and Marco will explain this more in a minute, is the toxin released from the harmful algae bloom works its way up through the food web. Our California sea lions love anchovies, and it hits them and it hits their brains. So California sea lions have a GPS signal in their brains. They know where they are within a 200-mile diameter. When the toxin hits their brains, they don't know where they are. So you probably have witnessed this California sea lion, especially last season, being aggressive in the water. We had a number of reports of bites and surfers biting boards. I witnessed a sea lion go after a surfer in the water. So that is atypical behavior for California sea lions. They are normally very charismatic and want to avoid people. But if you make eye contact with a sea lion that's acting kind of weird, get the heck to the shore, because they will come after you. The reason they do that is because their brain system is fritzing and they're trying to locate a point where they can focus. So avoid California's brains. And you can report them. I have the reporting information to California, or Channel Islands Marine and Wildlife Institute. We have a few volunteers, Chuck, honoring him. Chuck goes out there and rescues the damage. So the last thing you should know is you want to avoid the waters. Just this past season, the Southern California Ocean Observing System, who collects information on harmful algae blooms and domoic acid outbreaks, they said that in Ventura County they had more reports than ever of people feeling sick after being exposed to waters, sinus infections, eye irritation. So this is a new finding. We used to feel that most of the toxin released from harmful algae blooms worked its way to the food web and into the mussels, but now it's apparent that there are impacts on human health. So we're sort of right here on the coast because of where we are in relationship to Channel Islands National Park. We see a lot of the impact of harmful algae blooms locally. So I put these also on the table over there if you want to take a photo. Here is what you can do to protect yourself. Go to, it's called Sea Harm, and as I mentioned, Southern California Ocean Observing System has a group of folks that do phytoplankton testing, and when there is an overabundance or overproduction, they are able to forecast, and Mark can talk more about this. But here we are, Channel Islands. Obviously, this is a red hotspot. So this is 2022. But you can also look this up to protect yourself if you want to know if there's a domoic acid outbreak. Secondarily, here's another resource you can check for freshwater harmful algae blooms. You can see re-reported Ventura Harbor had a verified harmful algae bloom report on May 27th. So you can take down this link or email me and I'll send it to you. You can report algae mats, and this is throughout the state of California. So if you want to at Trinity Lake or Northern California, you can find out if the water body where you are is having harmful algae blooms that could impact health. So just real quickly, Clean Water Act protects all of our nation's watershed. It was implemented in 1972, which I remember as a kid because, I don't know if you remember, but the Allegheny River in Pennsylvania was literally on fire because there was so much pollutants in it. So we've come so far from that. Unfortunately, as you all know, the Clean Water Act is being challenged. And in 2022, the first big challenge was from the Trump administration's decision to weaken the Clean Water Act protection of wetlands. So that is really, really not a big deal because it's well-known wetlands help filter out pollutants. Does anybody know where California, in our area, last wetland, one of the last wetlands is? At Ormond Lagoon. So if you're interested in learning more about that, you can talk to our lead, Joe Clark, and learn all about the importance of protecting that wetland in our area. So here's the last thing I really want to talk to you about, and oh gosh, the Clean Water Act is currently under attack further from this new legislation called the Permit Act, and it would dramatically weaken protections for coastal waters, rivers, wetlands, and drinking water. So it would silence tribal and state environmental decision-making processes and open the door to more toxic discharges. So Surfrider will soon have a petition out that you can sign to send to our local congresspeople to zap that process. Okay, so if you just check our social media or our newsletter, we'll have a link to sign the petition. But I really urge you to sign this because clean water is a right, isn't it? And it's up to all of us to keep our watershed clean and to advocate for clean water, not only for drinking water, but for recreational purposes. It's the source of all of our life. So, that's it for me. So let me introduce our first speaker. So I tracked down Marco. Marco, he grew up in Chile and he came to study at UCLA, and he just completed his dissertation, so he's officially Dr. Sandoval Belmar. And I saw the publication of his dissertation, and I was so excited because, as I was telling him before the meeting, he is my guy. I've been waiting for his research to come along. So what he does is 3D modeling of ocean problems, particularly harmful algae blooms, and forecasts, and lets us know what's the way forward. He has a really unique perspective on modeling and how that can help us plan ahead. So let me make sure I get all of this CV in here. So I asked Marco, what's your relationship to the ocean? And he basically said that he has a love-hate relationship with the ocean. And originally his training is in 3D modeling and geophysics, but he thinks that combining biology, chemistry, and physics to study the ocean in a holistic way really matters, and it helps put giant puzzle pieces of the complex issues that face the ocean all together. So he loves the ocean, and he sees it as a source of work, food, and recreation and inspiration, but he acknowledges as a scientist that scientific modeling doesn't always come out as expected. And he's also impressed by the vastness of our ocean. So his recent PhD was called Examining the Interplay Between Terrestrial Nutrient Inputs and Harmful Algae Blooms in the California Current. So Marco currently teaches at HABs in UCLA, and he holds a PhD in Atmospheric and Oceanic Sciences. So I'm so thankful for Marco driving up here from LA. It took 2 hours. And for letting me track him down. I tracked him down first through Instagram. He said, oh, this takes time here. So anyway, we're so happy to have Marco. So welcome, Marco.
Okay, expectations, yes. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me to talk. So to talk about what I call the Harmful Algae Bloom, I'm going to be calling HABs most of the time. And what happened this year with this massive event that we had, with the beginning up until the 23. So there's a big thing to cover here, so I will quickly go, and maybe you notice that this year we have this massive event that covered the entire, some of the major counties here in the southern California Bight. Here the news call it the horrific scene, a lot of sea animals get stranded, intoxicated, not only sea lions, but also dolphins as well. A lot of this marine mammal center getting more than 100 calls per day at some point. A lot of anchovies and sardine, the fisheries got completely closed for at least maybe 100 days or so, affecting whales. Some whales died because of this. And what may also is interesting for you, I don't know if this person is with us here now, because he's a surfer from Oxnard, so I was surfing and got attacked by a lion. And he ended up in the hospital. I think he's fine as well. So you may notice that this is a big thing as well. So let's start with the definition. So I always like to break this into kind of the definition of harmful algal bloom, starting with first algal or algae. Okay, especially microalgae. So here you have the typical food web where right at the bottom we have what we call the autotrophs, the guys that actually can produce their own food via photosynthesis. And we focus mostly on these little guys over here that are called phytoplankton. These are the microalgae. Okay? Literally they need plant wander or drifter, so meaning that they cannot swim against the currents, so they just drive up with the waves. And these guys are really super teeny tiny, right? We cannot observe with the naked eye, we need to rely on microscopes or even fancier technology. There are many shapes, colors, food. There are some zooplankton here as well, the ones that actually eat the phytoplankton. Many times you have diatom, dinoflagellates, cyanobacteria. This guy is really hard, Raphidos, PCI. And here I'm showing you an example of one dinoflagellate, Alexandra chain 4B. We are going to briefly touching about this guy, and it's a major problem in my own country. That's why I always like to show this. Now the rules. Another example from my country. Whenever you have the right conditions, for example, precipitation, then you will see that this burst of life, what they call the flowering desert in the China Atacama Desert. This is going on right now. And this is really good. And in the ocean, we actually have the same. Whenever you have the right condition of nutrients or fertilizers, as they were saying, light and temperature, then you have this flowering proliferation or bloom of phytoplankton. You can observe this under the satellite image in true color, what they call it. But also, we observe this using an algorithm to detect chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the pigment that phytoplankton has and plants to harvest light. So basically, scientists have developed algorithms to detect this with satellites. This was taken a few minutes ago, and here red is literally called a major chlorophyll signal that we can relate more or less with phytoplankton biology. Okay? And finally, why harmful? Harmful is causing or likely to cause harm. Reason. Now, how HABs can cause these harmful effects is first of all by sharp currents. If you have this crazy shape like this, Tentacles coniformis, like these spiky things, obviously this can affect, for example, some of the gills of fish, and they can die because of this. The other way is with the high biomass leading to substrate oxygen depletion. Basically, it's think that this is organic matter, this is phytoplankton that is alive, but at some point they die. So bacteria need to show up, decompose this dead organic matter. And to be able to do this, they utilize oxygen. So you end up with a situation where you have oxygen depletion in some regions. That leads to mass mortality of some fish groups. And finally, the one that we are going to cover is this release of toxins, secondary metabolized phytotoxin, for us just toxin. And there are many different types of toxins that can affect different parts of the human body. Now the question is why? Why do they produce this toxin? Maybe you want to poison your predator or change your taste so they don't eat you. Maybe you want to also feed other phytoplanktons. Resources are scarce in the ocean, so you need to some way compete for them. Capture more nutrients, for example, and many, many more. So there are many kinds and types of poisons. I always like to put these three. Those are
That's the purpose.
those are kind of relevant in the world, and actually I really like them because they are like self-explanatory. You decode the name, it's very clear what they do. And basically, obviously it has negative effects because, public health, people get intoxicated, you spend more money on fish and agriculture activities, some mussel farms, some shellfish farms, some fish activities need to be completely shut down, affecting unemployment, mistrust, people start consuming or going to the ocean. Tourism, nobody wants to go to a place that, the water looks weird, animals behave weird, or the ocean stinks, so obviously affecting tourism. Now we can jump to the full definition of harmful algae, at least a definition that I like. So empezar a That is the proliferation of microalgae in marine or brackish water, or even in freshwater like lakes. That can cause massive death of fish, contaminate shellfish with toxin, and other recursive way that humans, we perceive as harmful. That's the kind of interesting thing about this. These are natural phenomena. They have always been here, and they will be in the future, but now that we rely more in the ocean, we utilize more the oceans, we start to feel these as a harmful, especially because, again, public health, fish activities, agriculture, and so on. Okay? So, this is a typical picture that you can Google. You will see a harmful algae bloom, red colors over here. But I will tell you that this is also a harmful algae bloom. Maybe you saw this, I think it was last year, a surfer doing crazy things over here by this. This is a biomolecule that can react with the movement and produce this bioluminescence. It's really beautiful. But I would not recommend to do this because it can give you some skin irritation, some headaches, some stomach problems, so it's better to avoid this, but it's really cool. So, do have favorable environmental conditions, right? Which can lead to blooms that can last, a few weeks, a few months. They can span from a few kilometers to 100 kilometers. And people also call them red tides. That's another common name. And it's kind of easy to see because of this color over here, but actually it depends on the type of the pigment that the phytoplankton contains, right? Sometimes it can have green color, sometimes brown color, sometimes no color at all. So that's why we usually call them better HABs, in general. About 5,000 species of phytoplankton. We know that 300 can bloom in high densities and color waters, and we know about 8 Okay. So what is the reason for making a HAB? So first of all, what are the common characteristics of the organisms that produce HABs? The short answer is none. They can be large or small, they can swim or not, they can be toxic or not, they can be autotrophic or mixotrophic, they can even eat another phytoplankton when they cannot eat photosynthesis, or they can generate different coloration or non-coloration. So here I have some examples of the typical harmful algae bloom species. This is the picture I showed you before. We are going to be focused in this guy over here. But here there is a map with types of poisons or toxins that you have in the US. Pick your favorite state and lake, and you will find a problem with harmful algae bloom. So it's kind of hard, but we do know something about the typical harmful algae blooms here in California. Okay? So, as you was mentioned, domoic acid. The HAB in the west coast of the US is called by this diatom called pseudomycia, that produces this neurotoxin called domoic acid. I'm not a chemist, but this is a molecule if you're interested about this. Basically, as I mentioned, whenever pseudomycia produces this toxin, then goes up to the trophic web and then can reach higher levels where it can reach us, and we can get the amnestic shellfish poison, which will lead you to vomiting, amnesia, coma, and even you can die of this. Luckily for us, the monitoring is pretty good, it's pretty efficient, so we haven't had any major investigations in the last years, but marine mammals get affected a lot, and we will see how and when. And also, particle BDA can sink and reach the sediment, affecting the key feeders like lobster and crabs. Okay? So, this is the major reason why, right? These guys eat pounds of fish and shellfish per day. So, they bioaccumulate a lot of this toxin per day. Meaning that, yes, then we will get the typical symptoms as you was mentioned, the seizures, the confusion, foaming, the aggression, and they can get strength. But what is strength in marine mammals? So the definition says it's an animal on the shore that able to return to the water, needs apparent medical attention, trapped away from the normal habitat, or there's dead marine mammals on the beach or in the water. So if you ever encounter this situation, as Jay was mentioned, do not approach to them because they can get aggressive because they are kind of lost and confused. So it's better just to call your hotline or marine mammal strategic network. I think there is one specifically for this region, that is the Channel Island Marine Wildlife. But yeah, just give a call and not approach to them. So finally, what happened this year? It all started back actually in December and well all the way to April. We had this domoic acid toxin and Alexandrum, the one that I showed you before, releasing the paralytic salvage poison. Both were going on at the same time, which is not very common. Both tend to happen in different regimes of different time of the year. We started usually early from December, and from back and spring all to the back. March was more so the month. Rest of September, well, I told you about more than 100 calls per day. And then a lot of do not leave warnings, a lot of sport harvest, biological shellfish, flows from Santa Barbara, sardines, and from Concepcion. So I took this from the California HAB bulletin. This was for May, June, but this is the overall what we saw this year. More than 2,000 total DA rates trending only this year, which is a lot, and we will compare. And you can see here, it was causing multiple Ceratonistia seriata group, that's the kind of the last name. Here there are 4 major regions of observations. You can see clearly that it started in January, somewhat March 2025 with these strips, and then a big jump right in Santa Monica, and the region for Calgary, Monica right now, third water is in Santa Barbara. Okay? So eventually the decline, the marine mammals dropped, but there were still some advisory from authorities that because it takes some time to depurate, to get rid of the toxin in the tissue. And here, you guys actually had another Harmful Algae Bloom from Akashiwo. They call it the flying potato because I guess it's like a potato and it can migrate vertically a little bit, because a little bit of movement. There actually got some reports of humiliation in Ventura. So how this year compared to the others, this is by far one of the largest, at least 50 years, some years. We haven't had events since the time 2022, but this guy goes all the way to 2000. A lot. And the thing is that I think a lot of females are pregnant. So non-rescue pregnancy like the vertical cups. And it's kind of hard to know what will happen or to predict into the future after having 4 years in a row, especially in the winter. Okay? So, in terms of factors, I always like to go from very local and biologically mediated to more like global scales. So, I always like to start with competition, as I told you before. Bacteria also can stress the algae and leads to production of domoic acid. And grazing, which is where the zooplankton wants to eat the phytoplankton and stress the algae with domoic acid. Then, on top of that, we have all of these nutrients, all of these fertilizers. Temperature, I'm going to define what is upwelling, runoff, this water that comes from, rivers, agriculture, and urban runoff that then can drag some of the pollutants and nutrients into the ocean. And then light also can be a factor. On top of that, we have the climate modes. I'm going to define that in a minute. Then on top of all of that, we have the climate change and the ocean acidification. That adds another layer of stressors to the algae and change the conditions of temperature, nutrients, and so on. Okay? So, I'm going to focus mostly in these guys over here, and for nutrients, I always talk about some key. Nitrate, ammonia, which are the major source of nitrogen. Phytoplankton, as us, require nitrogen. Ammonia is like junk food, really that. Then we have silicic acid or silicate, which is also really relevant, especially for Ceratonistia, because it's a diet. They require silicic acid to create a shell that protects them. And finally, there is phosphate, another major nutrient. So I told you that they can come from runoff, but also from upwelling. So really, briefly, it's a natural phenomenon that always happens in California coast during the spring and summer months. Basically, we typically have a wind that blows from the north to the south, and then because the system reacts, and because the earth is rotating, and the water masses cannot keep up with the speed of the rotation of the earth, there's a net effect of a deflection of the surface water that moves away of the coast, offshore. So water is leaving the near shore. So water needs to be replaced. You need to replace the water from somewhere, and that is from below, from the subsurface. So technically, this we call it upwelling brings colder temperature because it's at the subsurface. It brings high salinity, for example, but also brings a lot of nutrients. Then phytoplankton is really happy because they have light, sunlight, they have the nutrients. Zooplankton is even happier because they can eat phytoplankton. And then you have the big fisheries, big fish that can consume these guys, and then this is why it's so productive in terms of fisheries here in California. Okay? This is natural process that goes on. And I told you that on top of that we have the climate modes. The most common one that maybe you have heard is El Niño and La Niña. It's a climate node that affects the entire world, mostly the Pacific, but also affect California. Basically, some years you have warmer than usual conditions, and you expect, for example, to see warmer winters, more precipitation, and other years you can have cooler than normal conditions, and you expect a cooler winter, for example, and a stronger upwelling. Okay, a stronger upwelling. I like to think about this like a swing in the atmosphere ocean system that changes to a negative, normal, positive every 3-6 years or so. And we call El Niño the positive phase, a warming phase, and La Niña we call it the negative phase, the cooling phase. Okay? Good. What about Santa Barbara Channel? Santa Barbara Channel is a known hotspot where events often start early in the season without study, and it happens because of two major reasons. First of all, you have the normal upwelling winds blowing in the north, right at point of conception, and this water sometimes can enter the channel. And also, you have another type of upwelling because of the curvature of the coast. When wind blows in this direction, also you can have another upwelling. Okay? So that's one reason. The other reason is the cyclonic area. You can see that there is two currents, one goes in this direction, and the California current, and they converge over here to produce this cyclonic area, this counterclockwise, that tends to accumulate, concentrate particles, nutrients, and also Cellulitia, and then probably gives production of domoic acid. What we notice in this region is a lot of the events actually are at the subsurface, not at the surface, which is a little tricky because means that, for example, we have a disconnection of what is going on near shore. Sometimes we get stranded animals right at the coast, but the clear station do not measure any concentration of domoic acid. We don't see domoic acid at the coast, and we see a stranded animal from the coast. So these guys are going offshore, foraging at the subsurface, consuming anchovies, and getting intoxicated, and then get stranded at the coast. So these are a disconnection sometimes. So jumping on my research, just briefly, people have measured domoic acid on the California coast. They gave me the data, and we construct like this map of number of observations in each of these different points over here. How many points do we have? And we found that we have good amounts in three major regions, which are the Monterey Bay, Santa Barbara Channel, and San Diego Channel. Okay, so we did some correlations, analysis, statistical probabilities. I'm not going to show you any of that. I'm just going to show you the summary. Okay. So here in this pie chart, I have the three regions. If you want, you can just only focus in the Santa Barbara Channel. And I'm going to color code positive if it's positively related with domoic acid production, or negative in a green color. So winds, it is always positively related with domoic acid presence. And it is obviously positively related with upwelling, because you need winds to have upwelling. So more upwelling is more likely to have domoic acid presence. The typical signature of upwelling, I told you, is cold temperature. So it's a negative relationship, temperature, domoic acid, and more salinity, higher salinity, so a positive correlation between and domoic acid presence. And chlorophyll is this pigment that phytoplankton contains. It's going to make sense, right? Because more phytoplankton, more likely to have more chlorophyll, and maybe more sulfonychia, and then more domoic acid present. In terms of nutrients, we notice this positive relationship with nutrients, nitrate, phosphate, but here's where things become to be a little bit interesting. So it's like this negative relationship with salicylic acid. The story is that you need a lot of nutrients, but at some point when you run out of salicylic acid, for example, the algae feel stress and they produce domoic acid. Okay? This is more or less how it works. We also notice some positive relationship with the flow. This is just river freshwater flow and outflow. This is wastewater pipes or outflows. And finally, the kind of mode that I was mentioned. This is El Niño. La Niña, we call it El Niño Southern Oscillation, which is abbreviation, El Niño. And as I told you, negative means La Niña. So we expect to see more domoic acid under La Niña conditions. And there is another one that is called the Pacific Dipial Oscillation. For our purposes, it's really similar to El Niño, and it also is in negative relationship, meaning that colder than usual, more strong upwelling, and so on. Okay? So what happened here? Again, I'm taking the 4 stations over here. We're taking this as a time series, time, and then the concentration of domoic acid. You can clearly see a spike over here going on in this January 2025. What happened? We were on the La Niña, okay, that brought a lot of bottled water. Remember that, as I told you, for the Southern California Valley, we require that to be under La Niña, but also under a negative phase of the Pacific Dipial Oscillation. I'm going to show you a plot, a graph over here, where below the zero line is negative, above the zero line is positive. You can clearly see that, and bars are El Niño, La Niña, we can clearly see that we were under La Niña, and not only that, we were under a really strong negative Pacific Dipial Oscillation, which are the perfect recipe of these to be related with domoic acid production. Okay? That's the first part. The second part, that this brings an earlier well, okay? And as I told you, the typical signature of a welling is cold temperature, and you can see that when you take the anomaly, which means that how warm are you to a normal condition, or how cold are you compared to a normal condition. If you see blue colors, we were well far from the normal condition, and in negative, we were having cooling temperature. That's the typical signature of welling. A lot of water from below that bring a lot of nutrients. And this is how the nutrients are described. This is the silicate in red, this is the nitrate in green. You can clearly see that was having a lot of these nutrients, and then there was a spike over here that is more or less related with this spike over there. Okay? So eventually, obviously, depending time and the linear shift to a normal condition. We are under normal conditions. So it's all of these factors, but it's more complicated than that. Because again, I didn't mention any of the others. There is warming, there is climate change, different climate routines, the nutrient ratio. Iron is another nutrient that is really relevant that I didn't mention. The different, how big is one nutrient compared to the other is also relevant. And there is a combination of natural and human influences. And they interact. Okay? So this is kind of the second part of my research. Basically, people have, this is a nice project that I researched that was done in 2021. Basically, they took the Southern California Valley model and they inject real data of wastewater outfalls, either large or small outfalls, and also a lot of river information to this model. And they noticed that mostly nitrogen and ammonia come from this, and draw at 79% increase in phytoplankton, which is allowed. And there's a lot of studies saying that there is maybe a relationship with land-based inputs, this river and wastewater, and maybe they can stimulate toxic flows. So the logic question was that, okay, how the PA will react to this input of nutrients. So this is the modeling part, just one slide or two. Again, the molecule. So the mathematical formulation is really simple. It's just a mathematical formulation that tells you that, okay, phytoplankton requires nutrients. If you run out of silicate or phosphate, meaning that you are limited by those two, you produce domoic acid. Okay? But if you are limited or run out of nitrogen, you don't produce domoic acid because there is an atom of nitrogen here. Means that phytoplankton cell needs a required nitrogen to produce domoic acid. So if you not have enough of nitrogen, then you don't produce domoic acid. Now where all this comes from? Well, a lot of this comes out from both cells. The thing is like, what tends to happen is that more nitrogen and ammonia come from phosphates compared to acetic acid or phosphate. That means that we're switching to a situation where you are no longer limited by nitrogen, but now you can be limited by phosphate or silicate, which is the perfect recipe to make acid. Okay? Okay, we add this mathematical formulation, we add it into a model, 3D model. This I'm showing you just the concentration of domoic acid. First, without the injection of nutrient that I was mentioned, you can see some interesting signals over there. And then we added the concentration of the wastewater, both salts and the rivers. Both look really similar, especially offshore. But when you are close, next to this major pipe, you notice a big difference. It's just concentration of domoic acid. So we did the logical thing like, okay, let's take the difference to see the enhancement. And in this case, it's a relative difference, that's just showing you how much in percentage are you increasing or decreasing the domoic acid production. And this is how it looks. So, all along the coast, basically, you are increasing by up to 200%, sometimes. And here are the regions of Santa Barbara, Santa Monica, San Diego. If you only focus within the first 15 kilometers, which is between the blue line and the coast, so within the first 15 kilometers, this is more or less how it looks. In some regions, you can get 50% or 100% with it. If you take the average of this, you end up with an average of 25%. So, meaning that you are increasing by 25% more domoic acid production just because you have this. I made a zoom for Ventura. We are right now, at least for my results, Ventura is kind of in a region that not much things are going on right here, but we are kind of sandwiched between two regions that actually increase a lot, 100 or 50%, and I will say probably maybe because of the rivers, maybe the oats of the minor pipes over there. Okay? Okay, so this is one of the last things. All signs point to marine HABs getting worse. This is the affected commercial and recreational fisheries. You can clearly see a huge spike in 2015 and 16, affecting the percentage of fishery being closed. But this didn't go away after this happened. It consistently keeps increasing, and also starting to decrease, but then it started to be big in the last years. So we have larger blooms, intensified after 2015, large duration and suitable timing. This year was about 5 months. Previously we had one for 6 weeks, and now the toxic and the impacts we have multi-month and multi-year fisheries closures. Statistics are frequently affected, more attack of sea lions, and multiple toxins are spreading. So the take-home message is basically to say that dolphin algae blooms are common on the Pacific Coast. They happen really hotspot here in Santa Barbara Channel. They usually start early because of this offshore area and this radiation sun. And you can have a situation of a stranded animal at the coast, but you don't see the domoic acid concentration being really deep at the coast. While driving these events, and only fueled by a welding, nutrient imbalance, and shaped by these climate modes and La Nina. And what's changing are becoming larger, longer, and more toxic. And climate change is expected to make conditions more favorable for future HABs. Also, human influence matters. Positive relationship. I showed you a positive relationship between water flow from rivers and wastewater. And I show you how the nutrients from rivers and wastewater increase by at least 25% on average on the coast. What can we do? And I divide this in 3 aspects. First is support the local monitoring. As so said, the Blue Water Task Force is really relevant because they complement whenever they don't measure the winter time where you actually have the biggest waves. So it's really relevant the work that they are doing, especially if we can push it offshore, that would be even better. So like local community action, I would say advocate for better nutrient management and watershed and upgrade some water sewage and treatment plants. You know, here there's a common problem, sewage spills, and some problem with the ultrafiltered water and treatment plants. And finally, I would say that this is one good things to do as an individual, but also I encourage you to stay informed through the California HAB bulletin. It's really simple. You can read it and you will find all the information where to email. So that's all that I have for you. And
what are the sources of the silicates?
what?
What are the sources of the silicates? It's easy to think of where the nitrates come from and the sources.
Sources of silicate are mostly weathering, meaning that it's coming from rocks.
Okay.
You know, but also come from every time that you have organic matter that then decompose, we call that decomposition or mineralization. That brings all the nutrients back to the ocean. So if they were in an organic matter way, they become inorganic nutrients again. So then you return back the concentration of hydrogen, silicate, and phosphorus. So that's another source. The other are sediments for purposes, many big waves from rock weather.
So if sediments were disturbed inland, it would translate down into the ocean levels.
If sediment were disturbed inland,
Through wildfires or erosion or floods, just took large amounts, larger than normal.
so yes, so anything that affects sediments can also affect the water, right? Sediment will have many sources of nutrients as iron, for example, as well. So yes, it also affects the environment for the animals that live there, like crabs and stuff like that. So any big disturbance that happens in sediment can be translated all the way to the water column as well. So, yes.
Did you have enough past observational data to confirm the accuracy of your modeling?
We do. I mean, obviously the model is not perfect. No model is perfect. We always have some problems. I can show you some validation rates. This is kind of boring. So I will say that as I showed you one slide, we have at least more than 20 years of data. So it all started back in 2000, and the California HAB map started like really strong, like maybe something in 2008. So we have a great amount of data, and also there's a lot of research cruises and vessels that go offshore, take samples. I will always complain about that with more data, because with more data, we have noticed that the regions that are well sampled, like for example here in Santa Barbara or in the Santa Monica, in San Pedro Channel, the alignment between model and data is really good. But in places where we don't have any data, which are San Pedro Channel, San Diego, offshore, the model does not very well because we don't have enough maybe data to validate, and maybe the model is not doing like the right thing also. Just a simple model. But yeah, we said that we have a good amount of data. We always want more.
Great presentation. It seems like California, like state coastal resource management agencies have started to pay more attention to that, and it's becoming more of like a topic in different agencies. And so I'm just curious if you, as like a scientist who's in the thick of it, if you can give some examples of how these agencies are trying to approach managing these HABs.
Good question. I don't know if I fully can answer this. But yeah, by the way, yeah, I'm not a marine biologist, not an expert in pollution. Basically, I got all of this data and run my models. What they usually do is they fund a lot of research, and especially a lot of modeling, and especially in the southern California, because as I told you, in this region is tons of nitrogen coming from wastewater pipes streams. So people are really concerned, and all the work under stakeholders, they spend a lot of money in all kind of type of model to validate and to see if they actually are able to predict. So I would say that at least for what I know, this is one of the major ways. And also, for example, they push us to do this kind of nutrient management. So basically, if you have a model, you can turn off and on and reduce the concentration of the input of your nutrient and see what happens in the water. That's another way that they also are really interested, and they push us to do this kind of assessments. I would say that is from my side. Maybe also they something called the land experiments or try to understand, because all of these factors are really uncertain, right? It's a main thing that can work. So maybe they also have those kind of research.
Thank you.
I used to hear that runoff from farms, all the fertilizer they use in farms, is what contributes to a lot of the algae. Is that just total BS or?
No, it's not. So a lot of work have been done more in the central California, because, well, you know that region, they call it the salad bowl of the world, because there's a ton of agriculture there, especially in the Central Valley. So a lot of work have been put into study the reactions of Sylvanesia or other species to the nutrient inputs. Here we don't have as much of agriculture, or not as big as rain that can drag over the ocean, but we still have a good amount. The Southern California bites, though I would say that it's one of the major regions with huge tons of nitrogen loads in the system. But if I remember, 97% of that come from anthropogenic sources, and about those, 95% are just wastewater outfalls, and the other 5% are from rivers. And all of the nutrients coming from rivers, only 1% are natural. So the rest 4% more or less can come from agriculture, drains, or other sources of runoff. Thank you.
So I don't want to cut off the questions. If you have any more questions, maybe you can grab Marco at the end here. We want to give our expert a chance to present. If you do not know how to report a sick or stranded sea mammal, please grab the Channel Islands Marine and Wildlife report card. The red number is the rescue hotline number. But again, you want to stay away from any animal that is sea journey. Please keep your dogs or anybody's dog away from them. I've seen numerous dogs chase these sick sea lions back in the water and bite them. The problem is the dog can fit. So sea lions have a ton of bacteria in their mouth, and you'll have to take the dog back. So our next presenter is Megan Woodbury. I met Megan through Dr. Dave Ryan, who teaches at Channel Islands. He was approaching Surfrider about doing a grant. We helped him with the grant, and he didn't get the grant. But it was about harmful algae blooms. And Megan became particularly interested in the psychological impact of seeing sea mammals seizure and die on the beach. What is happening with us on the beach? So if you have observed a sick sea lion on the beach and felt distress, you're not alone. So Megan just finished her master's thesis and a master's program in environmental science at the University of Oregon, and she's going to talk a little bit more in her research how the impact of harmful algae blooms and dying sea mammals impacts us as folks.
Sounds so sad when you say it. So my research is a lot, not of models, but of like
trekking up to people on the beach and asking them to take a survey while they're having fun, and asking them to take a survey about dead and dying marine mammals. So let me tell you why it is important. I think you can understand it from Marco's research. So as he told us, domoic acid causes an shellfish poisoning syndrome in our California sea lions. And some of these symptoms are really dramatic and can occur for up to like 4 days on the beach. So you can have an animal that is stranded, head bobbing, foaming at the mouth, having really violent seizures on the beach. And with kids playing around or people vacationing, you can see why it can be really traumatic for people. It can be brain damage and ultimately death. Here are just the numbers for Santa Barbara and Ventura County. Margaret usually had numbers for me out of Southern California. And these go back to 2007 from the Stranding Network. And not every single one of these is caused from domoic acid, but just in the last 10 years, we started having suspected DNA cases. And as you can see in our county, it is going up. And as of February 21st of this year, I think we had 528 stranded or dead mammals in our county. As we talked about, I think that you guys know the direct impacts of HABs to economies, livelihoods, contaminated shellfish. But what Dr. Ryman was interested in is the psychological effects of seeing the marine mammals, especially residents who frequent the beach all the time, and how that's going to impact them, and how people experience the beach if they start to see more and more marine mammals stranded or carcasses on the beach. So this is completely underexplored. There are really no major papers or literature about it. There's one in Italy where there's 7 stranded sperm whales that they asked people about. But this is such a really subtle impact or indirect impact from HABs, but it was something that he was really interested in. So I started this from a cultural ecosystem services approach, and as we know, the coast can provide a place of restoration, peacefulness. It provides a place for just people to go and relax and recreate. And research has shown that when you have unpleasant odors, like carcasses, deceased wildlife, repulsive visual experiences, that this can create negative perceptions of nature. So this could disrupt them wanting to go to the beach, wanting to be there, wanting to connect with nature. And this could turn into an ecosystem disservice, is seen unhealthy. So definitely he wanted to know the difference between people having experience with unhealthy animals or versus healthy marine mammals who love the beach. So I did this for the survey, of course. So I made, I chose 6 beaches in Ventura County, 1 in Santa Barbara, and I had 9 questions on 2 tablets, and went up to beach visitors, asked over 18, asking them if they would like to take my survey about how they would feel if they saw an ill, stranded, or dead marine mammal. And so I got about, just did 100 participants, and as you can see, there was more women than men, but you can kind of see the breakdown that about 80% of 100 respondents lived further than 15 minutes from the survey site. So you can't necessarily say they were tourists, but because they could live, maybe in a different beach or something, but only 20 participants lived between 5 and 15 minutes. And to the fun part, 85 out of 100 were really sad. They think about seeing an ill, stranded, or dead marine mammal. In terms of residential proximity to the beach, those living closer felt angrier and more helpless, and they were by far more aware. But however, the more aware and knowledgeable you are, you reported feeling slightly more sad about it. Those that were less aware of HABs and the problems with the sea lions
were reported feeling more angry. And 35 out of 100 chose HABs and associated biotoxins as the cause of the increased strandings, which I thought was a decent, number for 100 random people on the beach. But like 56 out of 100 chose marine debris as the cause of the increased strandings and deceased animals. So I don't know if that's something that push that we've all done so much for picking up the trash on the beach, but that was the largest guess. In terms of the biggest concern, 56 out of 100 chose marine mammal suffering. The really interesting part was that those that living further, 15 minutes from the beach, concern was marine mammal suffering, that those living closer, concern was water quality. So I found that really interesting. The one part in the survey that I wish I could go back and do was that I said ocean water quality. And I wasn't really specific whether it was for marine life or human life or exactly which water quality they were choosing. But I think there was definitely a difference between people living closer and further in terms of their concern. Another thing that was kind of a highlight was that more people were concerned for suffering and water quality than their own physical health and safety. So people understand, this is kind of interesting because there were kids and dogs running around, and people may not know how these animals behave when they're stranded or having seizures, and they were more concerned for water quality or suffering than something happening to themselves, or they are not also connecting that the ocean could be unhealthy, the animals are unhealthy, and maybe them getting in the ocean is not healthy. So that was another. Beach experience, I think we could all guess this. 50 out of 100 respondents said their beach experience would be less enjoyable. One that was interesting was 47 out of 100 said that the experience of seeing an ill, stranded, or dead marine mammal would bother them after leaving the beach. Thought that was actually pretty high. Those that visit less often, so that's people that visit once a year to 4 times a year, report their enthusiasm would decrease and that they had a less enjoyable experience than more frequent visitors. I don't know if this is due to like the shock and maybe they're more vulnerable because they don't see as many strandings, or if they spend a lot of money and time coming to the beach and then all of a sudden they see a dead animal and their time, their special visit to the beach is ruined. And next, the response and behavior. So I think the positive thing for the tourism industry was that we would say 70 out of 100 said their future decision was not affected by strandings or mortalities. However, 28 out of 100 said they consider going to another beach or not returning to that beach at all. I certainly think that this is inhibiting their connection to nature and their willingness to go to the beach. Those that visit less often and live further away were more likely to consider going to another beach. And if you were looking at it as a tourism board, like that's important. If people are changing their decisions to not come to Ventura beaches, if they're seeing more and more stranded animals. I think that definitely degrading conditions can change people's experiences with wildlife and recreating in the water. And that's a really compressed version of my research. But I made at the end of this because in Monterey they have signs up everywhere about domoic acid symptoms and who to call if you're stranded. And here in Ventura County, as far as I'm aware, we don't have any. So we have no people want to drag the animals back into the ocean. They want to feed them something because they think they're hungry. We have no communication to the public about what is happening to them. Usually lifeguards are the #1 people that beach visitors ask, and sometimes these are 19-year-old kids that don't know what's going on themselves. So I made an ArcGIS story map link, so I distributed that to the harbor department, to send to the lifeguard stations so that they can give it to the public. And it has a really easily adjustable, basically website that talks about domoic acid, symptoms to look for, and who to call in terms of stranding, just for Santa Barbara and Ventura County. But hopefully, I think better communication and public outreach could help people maybe understand what's happening and maybe be less confused, maybe less angry. But an interesting thing I didn't put in there was that over 40 responded, 100 wanted text messages when there were strandings. So I thought that was really interesting because normally we don't want any text messages for our phone. We think that it's very, very personal. But people would want notice of which beaches have strandings. So I've got 4 kids, and I know my daughter saw one seizing, and it was really traumatic for her that she even asked about it like a week later. You know, so I found that just kind of an interesting thing that maybe families or somebody would want to know because they wouldn't want to expose their kids to the mammals. But as Marco said, the HABs are increasing in frequency and duration. So I think this is going to be a bigger public interest problem for us going to the beach and maybe getting more swelling of interest to get notices up there, or just maybe for like the spring and summer season, you know, semi-permanent signs up on our beaches, but I don't know if the county will help.
Well, thank you, Nate. What I wanted to say is we need to pay attention to our sentinel mammals and the story they're telling us, right? So I forgot to mention that there's another group besides Simwe called Channel Islands Cetacean Rescue Unit, and they take the tissue from dead dolphins and whales, and they study those again to trend what's happening with the domoic in our area. So if you're on the beach and you see a dolphin with a big square, it's not a zombie. It's those researchers that have been there. So live strandings, call Simwe, dead dolphins, dead whales, call Channel Islands Cetacean Rescue Unit. So lots of information here. There will be a quiz as you leave, so make sure you go home for next time. So go ahead.
I have a question. Did you interview the respondents during the stranding?
So I interviewed them about a week before Labor Day. So there was a carcass on one of the beaches that I actually was at, but I chose to, I didn't want to like make the data, you know, influence the data. So I actually went further. This was at Mom's Beach. So I went to the next little jetty over and interviewed or, you know, surveyed people. But yeah, so it was during August when there would be more.
Were you interviewing while there was a seizing?
Oh, no. No, it was if you potentially saw an ill or stranded or dead.
Because I think that it would be interesting, the difference when they're actually witnessing a stranding, and also there's a big difference between the dolphin seizing and the sea lion. The dolphin being a lot more dramatic.
And 97 out of 100 had experienced a stranding on the beach. So it wasn't actually had to be our beaches here, but they experienced a stranding. So that's almost all of them.
So good news about signage. When phase 2 Surfers Point is done, we're going to have interpretive signage. So we will have a little bit of information about the weather task force, the QR code, and Channel Islands and Wildlife Institute.
Thank God.
Yeah, so you were the inspiration for that actually. So I hate to cut us off, but I close us out. So what can you do? Please support our chapter. You can become a member for only $5, and you'll get in the future some blame from our national office. You can sign up for a QR code, but that is going to keep our chapter work going. Marie also has some QR codes in the back. Please follow us on social media or sign up for our newsletter to find out what we're doing locally with all of our programs. And
On
also,
that note, Joy, will also say, as you're leaving, if you want to share with us your email, so we can add you to our monthly newsletter. You can also go on our website and subscribe, but either way.
right, so, and then I forgot the last thing. Oh, we need more volunteers for Blue Water Task Force water sampling. We have our team's full, but people go out of town and get sick, so we need substitutes. And if anybody's interested that lives in Ventura County and sampling at Red Creek, again, Point. That's a really important surf site. We'd like to keep our eye on chronic bacterial problem there. So we would love to have you sample up there. That's an issue. But please support our chapter work. As you can see, we're doing a lot. The Water Task Force also does source pollution tracking through DNA studies. They're kind of expensive. So we're always looking for extra funds to do those. We are also involved with some the nutrient pollution issues. We've developed a relationship with the Water Quality Board and also with the Farm Bureau, trying to hold them both accountable for enforcement for the bad actors that are over applying fertilizers and pesticides in our area, in the ocean that impact our health. So if there's not any more questions, oh, there's a question.
Dr. Sand, a lot of waterfowl that are affected, especially pelicans and cormorants.
Yeah. Yes.
And you can call Santa Monica Wildlife Rescue, and we have volunteers all the time to pick them up.
Great, thank you for mentioning that.
And if
Santa
we get them
Barbara,
in time, we can save them.
yeah, Santa Barbara Wildlife comes and rescues the coastal birds. I don't know if you guys know that we've lost 70% of our coastal birds since the 1950s. So they're critical for keeping healthy beaches and marine environments safe. Last question?
Thank you for your ocean-friendly gardens, which is a very small-scale kind of impact. Is Surfrider going to push for more stormwater treatment as King County did to help their salmon?
Oh, that's a big question, but yes, please support our ocean-friendly gardens. You can look on our sign-up page, opportunity pages for learn how to do ocean-friendly gardens. Our region is different than the King County, but we would love to see more fish in our river. Paul is the author of Ventura Dam Removal, and hopefully we'll be seeing our fish come back once that dam is down and the river is flowing as it used to be. So sorry I can't ask your questions more in full, but different regions, different answers, but thank you for bringing up ocean-friendly gardens.
Yeah, just one more thing. I appreciated the talk by Mark earlier. And also, I think you mentioned that people thought it was the marine debris that was causing these animals to be sick, but it's not, right? So there's so much emphasis that people have put on catching the trash before it goes out. You know, Oxnard has, special kind of trap to trap the plastic bags, But Mark was talking about nitrogen. We need to remove the nitrogen from our runoff to solve this problem. But that's not happening. So I'm just wondering, is Surfrider going to advocate for that?
Yes, we're advocating, didn't want to talk about that tonight, it's a whole other topic, but yeah, we have been working with the Water Quality Board and the Farm Bureau to address that because it's a complex problem, but we need to hold both our growers accountable and also ourselves, what we're using in our yards. So that's where Ocean-Friendly Gardens comes in. But I've been promising to write a blog about that topic, so maybe I'll actually have to do it. And I'll put a link up on our social media. So thank you. You've been great listeners. If you have more questions, I think Marco, can you hang out for a few minutes? Megan for a few minutes. If you have any questions of our program leads, please stop by the table. There's merch back there. Please, I forgot to say that. Savable oil. One way we want to keep our water clean is responsible, right? So if you haven't been following that in the news, we have a petition that you can sign. There's a QR code there or a QR code there that's going to hold savable oil accountable for managing your pipeline that is overcrowded and probably will leak again. So it's a big issue, but please look up at the talking points and sign that. So thank you again for your support of our chapter, and we will see you soon.